Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is an historic day, a historic time in Illinois' history. We are facing an opportunity to make one of the most important structural reforms that's ever been done on behalf of the people of Illinois. And unfortunately, time's running out. We only have a few days left before the court needs to rule so we can get this initiative on the ballot for November 4th. We're just facing just a few days. And it's a critical time. We have collected almost double the number of signatures needed, petition signatures, to get it on the ballot. Under the law, we needed to collect 298,000 signatures by May 4th. We collected almost 600,000 signatures. Term limits are overwhelmingly popular, overwhelmingly demanded and encouraged and wanted by the people of Illinois. The vast majority of voters in both political parties support term limits. Vast majority of Democrats, vast majority of Republicans, and independent voters want term limits to be in place for our elected officials in Springfield. And they deserve the opportunity to have the choice to vote themselves on whether 8 years is an appropriate length of time to serve in office. We believe very strongly that 8 years is the right amount of time. You know, when America was founded, George Washington, our founded president, he could have been president for life. He could have served as long as he wanted. He was hugely popular. He controlled the military. He could have been president for life. In fact, many Americans wanted George Washington to be king. George Washington said, no, I'll be a public servant. I'll work for the people of America for 8 years and leave office. And let other leaders emerge. Let other elected officials come forward and serve the people. And he did that voluntarily. That was not the law then. He did that voluntarily. And he changed the course of history in America because most other countries that got democracy early on, they elected an official and he said, I like this power. I want to keep this power. I'll stay here for life. And many of them turned into dictators. That could have happened in America, but it didn't because George Washington said 8 years is enough. I'll leave office after 8 years, voluntarily. We need that mindset in Springfield. We need good government brought into Springfield. We need folks to run for office who are here for the right reasons, to serve the families of Illinois. They are not here as a career to make money. They're here to serve the people, make common sense judgments, take the tough votes, make the tough decisions, and then leave office and let other citizens of Illinois emerge to also lead and also participate in the government. That's the way democracy works best. That's why we're so strongly in favor of term limits. Now, we hope and believe that the court will rule quickly. We are pushing the appellate court, encouraging them and asking them. I have to say, I personally am deeply disappointed that the Supreme Court has refused to take this case. They have pushed it down to the lower courts. And the reality is, whichever side was going to win in the lower courts, the other side was always going to appeal. And this is such an important structural reform that this was always was going to end up in front of the Supreme Court one way or the other. And the fact that the Supreme Court wouldn't recognize that and in fact went into a delaying mode, that's tragic. I don't think the people of Illinois are not being served well by our judicial process to have this occur. The Supreme Court should take up this issue and rule on it. And we believe that the petitions, the draft, the constitutional amendment that's drafted by Steve, it is constitutional. We specifically crafted it so it meets the constitutional tests. And we believe that if the judges would hear this case, they will rule in favor of term limits, allow it to be on the ballot, and allow the voters to vote themselves on November 4th with whether term limits should be in place for our elected officials in the General Assembly. Now, we hope and believe we'll be successful. If we're not in the tragic case, the very sad case, that the court does not act in time for this to get on the ballot, we will never give up. We will never give up this battle. We believe that the voters deserve to decide for themselves whether term limits should be in place in the state of Illinois. So what we will do, if we lose this in court, then we will take it further to the people again. Evelyn Sanguinetti and I will term limit ourselves absolutely at 8 years in office. If we're honored but elected to the people want us to serve for 8 years, that will be the most that we'd be willing to serve. But I will work tirelessly for candidates for the General Assembly who support term limits. And I will help them win office. We need to support elected officials candidates for the General Assembly who will run on, campaign on, and commit to term limiting themselves 8 years in office. If we do that, one way or another, over time, we'll get term limits in place, and we can restore good government, honest government, eliminate the patronage, the cronyism, the process of politicians being in office, the same office for decades, making money from their political positions. It's core to restoring the prosperity of our wonderful state, our beloved state of Illinois. Now, our current governor has proven himself to be a phony on term limits. He's proved himself to be unreliable. He's proved himself to be a failure. He supported term limits 20 years ago, or at least he said he did. He didn't get them done, and now he's opposed to term limits. He's opposed to the term limits petition drive. I encouraged him, I asked him to join us and co-chair this effort with us, because this is a bipartisan effort. This is not partisan. This is bipartisan. This is good government reform. But Pat Quinn has refused to join this effort and is now opposed to term limits. That's a failure on his part. He is already, at the end of this term, he will have served 6 years. He should have not even been running again if he really believed in term limits. 6 years is a long time to be in any one office. Shouldn't have been running again. If he run again and had another term, he'd be 10 years in office. Too long to serve in any one office. This is a critical time. We will never give up this battle. We are going to work for the people of Illinois to restore integrity, honesty, good government on behalf of the people again. Term limits is a critical initiative. This battle will continue one way or another. We are reaching out today to rally the voters, let the voters know we're there for them. This is a key time. We'll encourage the justices to rule on this case, and let's get term limits on the ballot so the people of Illinois can decide.
This is a plus
Thank
for
you
you
very
either
much.
way. Bruce, this is a plus for you whether it wins or loses, right? Because you get a rally behind the whole idea about it.
So is now a good time? Do you want to do?
Right now, we're asking
Okay,
questions,
sure.
so
Okay.
why not ask
If you
questions?
lose,
You know,
if the term limits loses,
So-
point proven, vote Rauner. If term limits loses, point proven, vote Rauner.
The critical issue is we get term limits done. One way or another, we'll never give up this fight. The voters deserve to decide about whether term limits are appropriate or not. What are the politicians afraid of? Why are the politicians afraid of term limits? Let the voters decide. You know, today, the politicians are putting a lot of toothless referenda on the ballot for November. They have no impact one way or another. It was easy for them to support that.
Why it's
Why
a
won't the
win-win for you?
politicians? Why won't the politicians support term limits? Let the voters decide. The voters deserve to have a voice.
Did you support it in 94? Did you support it in 94? Did you support it in 94? Did you support it in 1994?
Let me get
Okay.
him and then we'll do some more. I'm sorry, what's your
You
question?
talked about the popularity of the issue, but how is that relevant to its constitutionality? What's the popularity of it have to do with the legal issues in the end?
Well, they're separate issues. They're both important issues. The people have shown that they support term limits and want it. We could have raised, if with given time, we could have raised unbelievable numbers, millions of signatures. Voters want it. And in every poll that's done, if asked about term limits, the voters of Illinois say they want them. But the politicians won't allow them to vote in a binding referendum. Why not? What are the
It's
politicians
judges.
afraid
The
of?
courts also
It's
say,
judges.
are the courts in cahoots with the politicians?
Sure. What do you think of points? Can you say that in the
The
mic?
judge, the judges should rule on this case. And as I said, the Supreme Court justices know that one way or another, whichever way the lower courts ruled, this was going to be appealed. And this is an issue that is so important and so structurally critical for the state. The Supreme Court should have taken it up right from the beginning.
So what does that say about the Supreme Court? Are you going to be putting money into changing over the justices there and getting them off the bench, or are they too politicized, or what?
We want to get term limits on the ballot, and we will work hard because this is an issue for the people. This is good government, good
Right, but what about the
government.
What about the justices? Yeah.
We're gonna work hard to get this on the ballot one way or the other.
Did you know that Mike
Yes.
Madigan gave $5.5 million in a member initiative to remodel this building into the arts center it is? And if so, do you think it was an appropriate use of state money and a good place for this press conference?
There's 3 questions. I don't know what to answer. Was not aware of that.
Okay, I mean, is that an appropriate use of state money? That it was $5.5 million to this building, so you can have a nice stage for this event.
I don't know how to answer that.
Did you support term limits in 94 when Quinn pushed it?
94, I didn't work for it, but I certainly was supportive of it.
Okay.
What about the Paul Vallis event this morning on the Cayman Islands? Can you explain more about what the logic behind the gridlock and the Iron Shore funds, setting them up in the Cayman Islands?
Okay, I'm not sure. I've been on the bus tour all day. I don't know what Paul Vallis said or did. But
Well, I mean, he's saying that you ought to disclose your partners in those particular investment vehicles. I mean, is that something you'd be willing to do?
okay. So we can. It's okay. We want to answer. We should. This is a press conference. We can answer some questions. So this issue of the Cayman Islands, this is a red herring. This is a distraction. This is being foamed up by Pat Quinn and his allies to create a distraction in the media for the voters. It is not a real important issue one way or another in this election. My tax rate is the same tax rate as Pat Quinn. I pay my taxes, full taxes, follow the rule, follow the law. I have never set up a Cayman's account for my own assets myself. My firm has set up some Cayman's accounts, just like almost all investment firms that have overseas investments set up Cayman's accounts. Pat Quinn's own pension has many Cayman's accounts in it. The Illinois state pension system has, I don't know the exact number, I would bet hundreds of Cayman accounts in the Illinois pensions. It's common practice, it's not sinister, it's not evil, and those accounts did not impact Pat Quinn's tax rate, did not impact my tax rate. It is just standard practice in the investment world. This is a distraction because Pat Quinn is failing on taxes himself. The real issue is Pat Quinn wants to raise taxes on the families of Illinois. I am working to lower taxes on the families of Illinois. That's the critical issue that Pat Quinn wants to distract from. Pat Quinn has been a failure on jobs. We have lost 4,200 jobs in Illinois this year under Pat Quinn. And he's taken us to one of the worst economic performances of any state in America. Illinois has become one of the most hostile states to business in America under Pat Quinn and his friend and predecessor, Rod Blagojevich. We've had 12 years of economic decline and stalemate, and we can't fix any of our other problems. We can't fix our pensions and fund our pensions. We can't fund our health care. We can't fund our education unless we are a growth state.
Well,
to be a growth state, we need to create an environment where businesses are here to invest and grow and thrive. Pat Quinn is failing on that, and he's trying to create distractions.
How much credit or blame should one governor get? It's like those baseball managers. They get too much credit when they win, they get too much blame when they lose. What's the right note for someone who happens to be in the governor's chair when all these events happen that we're talking about?
You know, that's a great question, and the answer is the governor should take primary responsibility for the economic issues and performance of our state. You know, the governorship in Illinois is one of the most powerful political offices in the United States. It's a very powerful office. It has huge ability to create regulations, enforce regulations, repeal regulations, put in pro-business and pro-growth people inside the government, and to work closely with the General Assembly as a partner and as a leader to drive results and get things done. Pat Quinn has not been a leader. He has not driven results. He has not improved the business climate in Illinois. He has led to deterioration in the business climate in Illinois, and that's why we're suffering so badly. And he's trying to create distractions from his horrible track record. He has misled the voters and failed the voters on taxes, on job creation and economic growth, on education, and on term limits. He's a phony on term limits. He should be here supporting term limits right today.
Hey, Bruce, Rahm Emanuel.
Companies that you had like Centa were actually outsourcing experts, and that you worked to teach other companies how to outsource jobs away from America, away from lower paid jobs overseas. Correct, incorrect, fair criticism or not?
So this issue of outsourcing, this is going to come up a whole bunch of times. And again, another red herring, another distraction. I have never closed a plant and moved jobs overseas or that sort of thing. That's not what my business was. We never did that. Here's the issue. Illinois competes in an international economy. America competes in an international economy. We need to grow and we need to be competitive. Many companies have international operations, overseas operations. They need to be effective and compete and have effective costs and high productivity. And to criticize companies that have overseas operations, some of our companies did. There's nothing wrong. Apple, Nike, many of the most respected companies in the world have operations in the United States and in Asia and Africa and Europe. That's part of our economy. The critical thing is, rather than criticize companies that might have operations on another continent, and criticize them and say, well, that all their jobs should be in America. No, not every job should be in America. What we need is companies thriving and investing and growing, and especially growing in the United States. And to grow in the United States, they often need to have effective operations also on other continents. Here's the critical issue. America needs to compete and have a competitive economy on our taxes and our regulations, and especially Illinois needs to compete. Today, Illinois is not competitive. We are not competitive. Our regulations are punishing. We rank at the bottom among states for our regulatory environment and our attractiveness for business. And our taxes are some of the highest in America on business. We can't grow our economy. We can't create jobs for Americans and for Illinois families unless we change that and we're pro-business and pro-growth. And you know what I'll say very simply, and as a matter of fact, Pat Quinn and his policies and the leadership in Springfield and their policies are major outsourcers of jobs leaving Illinois. They have led to declines in employment in Illinois. We've moved to the bottom on economic growth and job creation, and we've lost jobs this year. We've led the Midwest in job losses this year. That's the tragedy. Talking about jobs leaving, or outsourcing is a strange word. I won't call it outsourcing. I will say loss of jobs. That's Pat Quinn. That's the failed leadership in Springfield, and that's what we've got to change.
You got
One more
another,
question.
Rahm Emanuel. You said you only one question. I want this question.
No, you've asked one already.
Rahm Emanuel said that there would be taxes. You should release your taxes. What do you say to that?
We've had people saying that for 12 long months. Here's the issue. We have already released far more than is required.
But you
and
won't
we've gone
release your
multiple
schedule.
years.
Rahm Emanuel says it's a rite of passage. Why not do it?
Everybody's
He's
got
your
their
friend.
opinion.
Can I
So-
bounce off of that? And so
So
Illinois,
let
there's
me,
been.
let me answer your question. Okay, so everybody stay calm. We have released far more than is required under the law. We have released multiple years of our tax returns. And people say, well, release 2013. We will. 2013 hasn't been filed. Every year we file, the process takes 6 months longer. Every October 15th is when the tax returns are filed. As soon as they're filed, we will release those. And they will show what my tax rate is, what my income is, what my tax percentage is. We've released that. And what's crystal clear, my tax rate's the same as Pat Quinn's. He's trying to accuse me of dodging taxes or not paying my taxes.
We just
I
want
pay
to
the
know
same
what
amount of taxes.
where your money's
So,
coming from.
Thank you, everybody.
Why
I
not
appreciate your
why
time.
not
Let's
ask
get turned
why
to
not
the
ask where the money's coming from?